Street Fighter II: The World Warrior is a legendary 2D fighting game that was debuted in 1991 for the arcade. The game features a playable cast of 8 characters from all over the world. Characters include Ryu, Ken, Guile, Chun-Li, Zangief, Blanka, Honda, and Dalsim. Characters fight in matches that are based on a win of 2 out of 3. So say for example if your character wins 2 rounds, your character has won the match. As far as story goes, there are a few mini-plots within the game, but most of the characters are basically just fighting for themselves. Some of the mini-plots include, for example, Guile getting revenge for the death of his partner Charlie, and Chun-Li wants revenge for the death of her father at the hands of Bison, the final boss of the game. The overall plot, however, revolves around the idea of Bison wanting to get revenge because of the events taking place in the Alpha series. Although the Alpha series was made after Street Fighter II, according to the timeline, it takes place in between Street Fighter I and Street Fighter II. After defeating all of the playable characters in the game, you now have to face up against the 4 bosses of Shadowloo, which are, in order, Balrog, Vega, Sagat, and finally Bison. Controls are smooth and nothing feels like it's being forced. However, there are 3 basic control strategies that you must follow. They are aggressive, defensive, and grapple. The aggressive control type consists of down, forward, and an attack button, or down, back, and an attack button. The reason this is an aggressive type is because you really don't have to wait for anything, and you can move at a much faster attack rate. Characters of this type include Ryu, Ken, Dalsim, and Sagat. The defense type generally consists of a configuration that has you hold back for a couple seconds, press forward, and then press an attack button, or it'll have you hold down for a couple seconds, press up, and then the attack button. The reason that this is a defense strategy is because most of the time when you're holding back, you generally are blocking. Or if you're holding down, you're waiting and holding much more of a defensive approach to fighting. Characters of this style generally include Chun-Li, Honda, Blanka, Guile, Balrog, Vega, and Bison. Within the defense strategy, certain characters have the ability to mash a certain attack button multiple times, which will allow them to do an extra attack. For example, Chun-Li, when you mash her kick buttons, will be able to do a bunch of flying kicks, whereas Honda will throw a bunch of massive palms. Blanka will surround himself in an electric current, preventing anyone from being able to touch him, unless they manage to throw a projectile or manage to hit him at just the right time. This is still defending though because of the lack of range of these attacks. The last type, Grapple, only has one person within this category, and that's Zangief. The way to perform these moves is you rotate the joystick one way or another, press a certain attack button, and he'll either grab them for a pile driver, a backdrop, a suplex, or something along that nature. Having these 3 distinct control types is great for beginners. It gives them a chance to not only pick up one character, but almost every character within that category. However, the downside to this is there's no real need for strategy once you pick up the basics of that control type. When it comes to the bosses of Shadowloo, each one of them has their own specific strategy that works against them best, or at least I generally find it to work that way. I'll start off with Balrog, who generally likes to throw charge punches. What I like to do with him is pick someone like Guile, wait him out, and as he's throwing the punches, wait for an opening, and then proceed to press down, hold it for a couple seconds, up, and then press the kick button and Guile will do a flip kick. This generally works. Basically the strategy is you need patience. Balrog will tear you up if you're not careful. Up next we have Vega, who is the fastest character in the game. What you're going to want to do with Vega is pick someone who can keep up. I recommend Chun-Li. She has a move called the Spinning Bird Kick, which basically has a configuration of holding down for a couple seconds, up, and then the kick button. This move, for some reason, seems to work best on Vega. He seems very vulnerable to this move, so basically what you're going to want to do is pick your spots, do this move, and for the rest of the match keep defending or giving small attacks. Up next, we have Sagat, who has been giving gamers nightmares for over a decade. Sagat basically is known for spamming the following: either his Tiger Fireballs or his Tiger Uppercut, and people would just get destroyed by this. I find that Chun-Li seems to be the most effective against him. Once again, she has a move where when you jump in the air, if you press down and the middle kick button, he seems very vulnerable to this, and this is good too because this move can also be comboed. So basically, avoid all his shit, jump up, stomp on his head a bunch of times, and he's done. Finally, we have Bison, the hardest character in the game, and rightfully so, since he is the final boss. I can't recommend any specific character. All I can recommend is that you don't give him any room to breathe. Pick your best character, keep attacking, corner him, just don't give him any chance to breathe, otherwise he will just rip you apart without mercy. After finally beating Bison, you're going to get to see the character's ending. This adds a replay value because you're going to want to see all the endings. I beat the game with Blanca, and in his ending, he gets reunited with his mother, they go back to Brazil, and live happily ever after. Street Fighter II is a legendary fighting game, and the impact it had on the fighting game genre could never be denied. The game would become so popular that you would see multiple upgrades. For example, Street Fighter II, the Championship Edition, would eventually come and add the 4 boss players as playable characters. Then you would have a few upgrades here and there that would basically let you adjust the speed, like Turbo and Hyper. Then you would see Super Street Fighter II, which added 4 more characters, which include DJ, Cammy, T-Hawk, and Fei Long. Eventually we would see Turbo Super Street Fighter II, which added Akuma as an alternate boss, and it would just go on and on and on. As legendary and awesome as Street Fighter II is, just like any game, it has its flaws. The lack of strategy is a minor flaw, and it really could be considered nitpicking, but it's still there. Next we have Ken and Ryu, and if I don't mention this, it's like the elephant in the room that nobody cares about. It's like going to a punch bowl and finding a turd floating and nobody cares. Ken and Ryu are the same character. I said it. They're the same exact character. They have the same exact moves to a T. There is no real difference in gameplay at all. If you're good with Ryu, you're good with Ken. That's just how it works. The only difference is a sprite change and a different ending. Now, I know that Ken and Ryu were both in Street Fighter 1 as Player 1 and Player 2. But did they really need to have them control exactly the same? They could have gave us something a little different. They could have given Ken a move that Ryu didn't have. I know that they would fix this later on, and that's good. But I'm talking about this specific game. They could have done something a little different. And luckily, in some of the upgrades later on, they would change a little bit of the emphasis on what Ken is good at and what Ryu is good at. So luckily, they do change it later on, but for right now, they're the same fucking character. And I know somebody's gonna be like, well, they're still great and they're still cool characters. True, but you know what? They're the same fucking character, and they could have just given them something a little different to separate them. Either way, it's still a great game. And I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I know somebody's gonna be like, what? It should get a 10 out of 10, you fucking noob! No, it gets an 8 out of 10, and you're gonna fucking like it, or else you can fucking leave. But seriously though, great game nonetheless. And I just have to take points away for those flaws. So as I said, Street Fighter II is a legendary game. It's got great visuals, good audio. I mean, the sound effects are classic. I mean, who doesn't know what a Hadouken and a Sonic Boom is in this day and age? If you don't know what those are, you've been living in a cave. Anyway, that's it for now. I mean, I've really said all there really needs to be said. So until next time, take care.